Blue Jays ace Kevin Gausman speaks out about the excuses being made for the underperformance by the Toronto Blue Jays this season. We'll reveal what was said by the Blue Jays ace on this episode of Locked On Blue Jays.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. Thank you for making Locked On Blue Jays your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. By the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This episode is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah, the right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today. As always, I'm Braden Iwasko. He's Carter First. You can find us on Twitter, Braden5 Iwasko. Carter First, too, as well on Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Blue Jays. If you're new here on YouTube, make sure you do drop a subscription there. If you're listening anywhere else, make sure you do head over to the YouTube, drop a subscription, hit the bell notification button so you guys know when we go live or post shorts, anything like that. As well, we have our shop open, so make sure you guys go check that out. Their shirts and, pretty much anything you could ever think of is available there, so make sure you go check that out. Link is in the description below. As well, we just created a Discord, so, we can interact with all the Blue Jays fans, all of you guys in that Discord as well. So pop in, drop in, click into that as well.
So we have a big plan for today's episode. We are 2 days into the Toronto Blue Jays offseason. We didn't think we'd necessarily have a ton to talk about, but here we go. We got articles coming out from left and right. And this one is from well-respected veteran Kevin Gausman, ace of the Toronto Blue Jays, speaking out about the underperformance of the Toronto Blue Jays, where some accountability should lie, and just how this team should attack the offseason and going forward into 2025. We have some of what the Toronto Blue Jays media and some of what these internal pieces of the organization were saying throughout the season, and also what Kevin Gausman and other players were saying throughout the season, just showing different perspectives of what the players were sort of thinking and how the Toronto Blue Jays media was portraying their season. And then if we do have some time, we kind of know, if you guys are coming back, you know how the Locked On Blue Jays do it. So we do like to get on yapping, especially about topics on your Toronto Blue Jays. But we have some time. We're going to go into some of the playoff matchups, some of the highlights of that, and just to keep you guys kind of surrounded in the MLB world. But obviously, a little bit of an elephant in the room. Usually, again, if you're tuning back into these episodes, Braden is the one kind of doing these intros, usually presents the show and what we're going to be talking about. But he's kind of taking some L's, unfortunately, just like the Toronto Blue Jays were doing in their last 12 games in the season. So, Braden, you got 2 days to digest. Obviously, you got some personal stuff going on. But overall, just how you feeling?
Oh, dude, not good. It was a rough Tuesday here. Had the long weekend, felt good. We went out for my brother's birthday. Everything was good. He was a little bit sick beforehand. Didn't really think anything of it. I went to bed last night. I was trying to make it through the football game, and I was just like, holy moly, I just feel horrible. Wake up this morning, go into work, and I'm like, yeah, this is just, and it was like -30 at work today. So I'm just sitting there with the chills shivering away. And I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going home. I think I've been in bed literally all day. Podcast comes around, Kevin Gausman, the big topics, a couple more firings. So, you know what? It's hard not, it just eats at you. Anytime there's Blue Jays stuff now, it just eats at me to get on the podcast. So here we are, ready to rock. And honestly, yeah, Carter's going to be doing a lot of the yapping today because I don't think I can talk for more than 2 minutes straight here without having to, cough up a lung here. So, in saying that, Carter, we might as well get right into it. I don't know. You want to start with the firings here? So, because there were some more. I can't believe that there's already more.
Yeah, might as well start with that, kind of get it out of the way. Not a surprise about any of these firings. Again, you maybe want to see Ross Atkins, John Schneider, some of those kind of firings. We'll get way more into that as the offseason progresses. But usually when some things don't go well in your baseball season, someone has to be held accountable. That's also what we'll get into with the Kevin Gausman stuff. But we did have some firings for some Toronto Blue Jays staff. So this from Shai Davidi. More Blue Jays changes as Jill Kim, that is the field coordinator, and Jeff Ware, who is the assistant pitching coach, won't be back on the Major League pitching staff per multiple industry sources. And the club is working on potential reassignments for both of them and David Howell, another assistant pitching coach. So in total, Jeff Ware, he's the bullpen coach, and David Howell was the pitching strategist coach. So again, just more of those guys that do have roles, obviously, within the team. These are the guys that, I see these names, I don't know them. I'm not going to lie. I don't look into what the specialists on the Toronto Blue Jays are doing. You look at more so what the product on the field is, but these are the guys that are making your analytics decisions. They're making these strategies for their games. So obviously, what we've seen from the 2024 Toronto Blue Jays, a lot of the strategies did not work out very well. Some of the game plans weren't executed very well as well. So again, there's players that you got to have accountability for, but also some of these internal hires. So it is nice to see some firing, just some new faces in the Toronto Blue Jays organization that has not had a lot of success recently.
Yeah, and I think we all knew that, moves were coming. Everything was going to be made with management, front office, whatever you want to say. There was going to be stuff done here after the lackluster 2024. I don't think we necessarily believe that it was going to come this quick. I think that's a little bit shocking. But obviously, I think even in Ross Atkins' head, John Schneider, whoever you want to say, it's been in their head probably since before the trade deadline. So odds are that they're just, making their rounds right now, understanding who needs to go and who's, available to stick around it. So it'll be interesting in the next couple of weeks to see if there's more of this coming to fruition here.
This wasn't something that just was overnight. Yeah, the season ends. Okay, let's just fire everybody. This was like when you're in a relationship and you're just not happy, and you know that eventually you're just working up the courage to kind of just let them go. And mentally, you're out of the relationship for about 2 months. You know that you're going to break up with them. You're just trying to find a way to do it, find the right time. This was the right time for the Toronto Blue Jays to get rid of some of their the people that they're not necessarily happy with at this point in their stay at the Toronto Blue Jays. But let's just get right into this article here. So there's going to be a lot to unfold here. I'm just going to get right into it because Kevin Gausman literally gets right into it. And this is what I love about Kevin Gausman, one of the most honest Toronto Blue Jays in this organization. So Kevin Gausman is tired of hearing the Toronto Blue Jays should be a better team than they are. He goes in and says, I'm sick of all the talent talk. We're so talented, this and that. We've got to start winning games. We've got to start to figure it out. We've got to do it quickly. I'm only getting older. Fellow starter Chris Bassitt is only getting older. We want it to happen. And this group, it has to happen soon. So what are we going to do? That's what everyone's asking. Everyone's asking what we are going to do. At least Kevin Gausman does have the wherewithal. Obviously, these players, they should know what is going on with their organization. They spend every single day in a clubhouse. They have a 162-game season. 87 losses can definitely take a toll on the mental. So for me, not taking too much away from this, Kevin Gausman, 33 years old, Chris Bassitt, 35 years old. There is going to be a time where some of these Toronto Blue Jays players are starting to get a little bit out of their primes. When you look at the position players on this team, a lot of young players. It's really now only George Springer, 35 years old, that is going to be on the outside edge of their primes. I guess you could throw like a guy like Nathan Lucas in there, but how much of a role is he going to have in next season? He's 30 years old. So again, we'll see with that. But Nathan Lucas definitely not a guy that I'm going to say is going out of his prime. But yeah, Kevin Gausman references that they're running out of time. And not just this for me, it's not as much about the age thing. As I said, look at your roster, a lot of guys, 25, 26, you have all these prospects at the trade deadline. When you're looking at position players, not necessarily a problem. For me, it's when you start looking at these contracts. As we went into this season, as we talked about a lot in spring training, kind of through the season as well, there was a ton of free agents going into the 2026 offseason. Now it's a little bit shorter with guys like IKF on the move, obviously not going to be here. A little bit of the trade deadline stuff did impact that. But there are still some major players that, if not re-signed, are going to hit free agency in the year of 2026. Obviously, the big ones that we've been talking about pretty much every single episode feels like on this podcast. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Bichette, those are the two main ones. You got to figure out what you're going to do with these two players. Chris Bassitt's another one. Chad Green, Jordan Romano. You have a lot of players here. You have Henny Cabrera. You have Erik Swanson. There's a lot of players that are going to be moving on from the Toronto Blue Jays and a lot of your core pieces. These are some of your best players on the Toronto Blue Jays. So when Kevin Gausman says time is running out, not only for him and his age, for a lot of Toronto Blue Jays contracts, this team can look a whole lot differently in the next season, even in the next few months of the season if things don't go too well.
Yeah, Carter, and you know what, we've always talked about the veteran aspects. You need to bring in veterans to complement some of these young pieces. I don't know if you're on the same boat as me, and I know Kevin Gausman gets in, and he does talk about the veterans here in this article as well, and bringing more in. I don't necessarily know that I fully agree with that standpoint. I think you need guys that are in the primes of their career. If you want to win, you need guys in the prime that can surround Bo and Vlad. They don't necessarily have to be super all-star MVP caliber type players, but they have to be in their primes and hitting their stride right now. That's what the Toronto Blue Jays need. They don't need these guys that are going to come, that are 35, 36. Yes, you might think they're stable, but there's never going to be that consistency with an older player. And they do. They have a lot of talent in the system right now. In these next 2 years, this is where all their key pieces are. And so if you want something to happen, it has to happen fairly quickly. And I think that by this point, through with this group of players, we expected them to be competing for World Series by this point. And it hasn't happened like that yet. So now is the time, push the chips into the middle here. It's time to go all in. And I think that's what Kevin Gausman's alluding to here. He's not getting any younger. Bassitt's not getting any younger. And they need to go all in here for the next few seasons.
Kevin Gausman uses the word veteran in this article, and veteran a lot across the league could just be defined as a million things at this point. You can have a veteran that's 39-year-old Justin Turner, for a free agency, 37-year-old Paul Goldschmidt that was recently available, and some people say Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is a veteran in the league as well. So when Kevin Gausman used the word veteran, I think a lot of other Toronto Blue Jays fans can allude to this as well. We don't want the 37, 38, 39-year-old that is on the edge of their MLB careers, already on the path of regression. We want the guys that still have some room to grow, maybe even or just playing in their primes right now, playing their best form of baseball. So you're going to need these guys, like he alludes to in this article. He says that a lot of our players right now on our position players are very young players. You have George Springer, and that's pretty much your only veteran in that clubhouse. So again, we're going to go into George Springer way more in the offseason. We're going to our standpoint on viewpoint on George Springer. We need some guys playing their best form of baseball right now to kind of show the guys, the younger guys, the guys like Will Wagner, Joey Loperfido, some of these guys that might be on your baseball team in 2025, the way of the road, how to be an MLB regular player, and just the ways of the league. And I think that can help with a lot of development, and also just kind of obviously round out your baseball team where you have these veterans, these guys right in their prime as well, and some young guys to keep the baseball game fun and the team fun as well. But there's so much more we got to go into this article. Kevin Gausman's previous articles, Chris Bassitt was mentioned in here, so I kind of want to get into that as well. For me, it seems like Kevin Gausman, Chris Bassitt might have been having some side discussions. We'll get into all of that after this short break right here. Today's episode is sponsored by FanDuel. You can start your experience with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Make FanDuel your main source of betting with all the sports you watch. One thing I love about FanDuel is how they have all of the information you need in one spot when looking into your bets. So you can just get a hunch in the middle of the game. You can look at the latest stats, view live play-by-plays, and do so much more on the same page where you place your bets. FanDuel does more than just sports betting as well. They offer the casino option where you can play your favorite slots, table games in the comfort of your own home. Braden has definitely been getting me to take advantage of this. It seems like I'm winning more on blackjack when I play on FanDuel rather than when I'm even in person playing at the tables. FanDuel also offers fantasy picks, horse racing, and even something called FanDuel Face-Off, where you can play minigames against real people and collect money because of it. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Today's episode is also sponsored by PrizePicks. There's really nothing better than watching sports with your friends, but what we always find ourselves doing is predicting the next outcome of a game, whether it's a home run for the Blue Jays, the red rifle for my Carolina Panthers throws a touchdown, or we get a highlight reel goal from Elias Pettersson. We always find ourselves making these side wagers. PrizePicks gives me the ability not only to show off to my friends, but it allows me to make some money off of my picks as well. So don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond, the ice, court, you name it, into your PrizePicks entries today. Whether it's the MLB playoffs, the NFL. Some people even get crazy and bet on NHL preseason. Braden, don't know where you're going there, but some people love doing it. PrizePicks is very simple to play. I make my picks and spin my entries in as little as 60 seconds. You know which players are going to perform on specific nights. Apparently, even if it is the preseason, it's no brainer. Download PrizePicks and start making your entries today. You can download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit matchup to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit matchup to $100. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, so a ton more to get into Kevin Gausman. We got to finish off this first article, and then we got some other articles throughout the year, some media stuff from what John Schneider was thinking in the middle of the season, what Ross Atkins was thinking, and then what the regular person with their head screwed on their shoulders was actually thinking about the Toronto Blue Jays. So before we got into this little break here, we were talking about some of the veterans on this team, what Kevin Gausman thought needed to be done in the offseason to kind of bolster this young team from the position player standpoint. So he says, we've got some young guys who can really play it, but we need some veterans to kind of show them how things are done and to be there because even our established guys are still young. Kind of just went over that. Like I said, George Springer, 35 years old, really the only veteran on your team. Obviously, he knows. He's seen Will Wagner play. He's seen Addison Barger at his high. He's seen David Schneider. There's a lot of talent on this team. If they can put it all together, this can be a good team going into 2025. But again, you got to make some moves. You're going to have to address some pieces in the offseason, make a couple big moves. Doesn't have to be anything crazy. If you get 2 to 3, maybe even 4 good players that will fit the construction of this team, that might be enough for the Toronto Blue Jays in 2025.
Yeah, and that's what's going to be interesting, right? Is what are they looking for moving into this offseason, right? There's a lot of holes open and a lot of holes to be filled, but which guys slot in where? Which of the young guys do you want to bring back? And where do you want to go outside of the team from? There are big questions, and maybe necessarily they don't even know what the answer is. They're sort of going to see where the chips fall, after the playoffs, and who's available from where, who resigns with their teams, who tests the market. It's going to be very, very interesting. And I think Kevin Gausman sees that. And these veteran players like Bassitt and Gausman and Springer probably see that more so than the young guys, right? The young guys just expect players to fall from the heavens and want to play for the Toronto Blue Jays. But I think these veteran players really understand that it's tough to get players to play anywhere. It doesn't matter what team you're from, unless you're the Dodgers or the Yankees. It's tough to get them to play anywhere. So it is going to be interesting to see sort of their reaction after the signings happen. And there will be some. There won't be none. I'm praying to God that there won't be none. So the interesting thing will be to hear from them post-signing and see sort of what they're going to say then. And see if it is enough for these veterans that the Blue Jays management team brings in.
One interesting thing I did take from this article, and we sort of talked about this a little bit off camera, but I want to bring it up on this podcast as well, is that Kevin Gausman brings up Chris Bassitt a little bit in this interview, references that he is aging as well. These guys are 2 veterans, got obviously very good, well-established MLB players, have had very good careers. Do you think they're having discussions about kind of their futures? Maybe not necessarily what they're going to do after the Toronto Blue Jays, but the Toronto Blue Jays organization, how their final years for the Toronto Blue Jays is going to work?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's hilarious, right? They're no different than when we played minor league ball or high school ball, and we're chatting just with how things are going. I remember we had a first baseman, and we were like, "Why is our bench guy not playing? He's unreal." And we're having him so they're probably having those same discussions about where their team's going to go. They want to know what their future looks like. They want to know what the path to success will be with this squad. So absolutely they're chatting about it. I could see the whole rotation, when they're sitting in the bullpen on their off days or in the dugout, they're definitely chatting it up about what's going on, especially when the losses are stacked up against you. You're going to have those conversations. What's the fix? Yes, you might not be the manager or the coach, but in the back of your head, these guys are still baseball guys. They understand the game, and they understand sort of, especially when you reach the veteran level like Gausman, Bassitt, and Springer. To understand the process of an offseason, of the signings, what it takes to get guys down to wherever you're playing. So 100%, I believe that these conversations are definitely going on in the clubhouse.
Well, and to add on to that, again, you can kind of just give me what your opinion is on this take. In a lot of situations, I feel like the players know how the players' talent levels are a lot better than the coaches even, because you got like these off-season training programs where you don't necessarily have your coaches there. We always talk about these hitters, these pitchers having their specific guys that they go to in the off-season. A lot of these off-season training programs, you're going to have guys like Vladimir Guerrero Jr., some other guys. You got Teoscar Hernandez when he's with the team training together in the off-season. All these Toronto Blue Jays starting pitchers most likely do this as well. They know how they train. They know how they're going to perform. They know their highest potential. They know if they actually do have the ability for what it takes to be an MLB caliber player. So in a lot of these aspects, these players maybe aren't going to be the most vocal about it publicly, but they're definitely talking behind closed doors. Well, this guy looked really good today. This guy has not looked good these last 3 weeks. This guy can actually be a very good player for our team. So they're definitely talking behind the scenes. Again, I don't think it's necessarily like, oh, after this, where do you want to go? Where are you going to sign up the Toronto Blue Jays if that is their plan to move on? I think it's more so, what is this team going to look like next season? Is there anything we can do to kind of, again, do this, maybe a little bit of player marketing as well? You see a lot of the time that some of these players are in some other of their teammates and friends' ears in the offseason, and it really influences them to come to the Toronto Blue Jays. We're going to see reports all through the offseason about Juan Soto and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. It's going to be very hard not to really dive into those. You got to just kind of remember Shohei Ohtani and then take that step back. But again, these players, they're not dumb. They know how their other players play. There is some conversations going on behind closed doors about the Toronto Blue Jays organization.
Absolutely. And not necessarily that it's always the big, the big picture stuff that they're chatting about. I mean, it's little things if you go back and look when Vladimir Guerrero Jr. was trying to help out Davis Schneider on some swinging stuff, it's little things like that
Chris
And
Bassitt and
sometimes
Bowden splitter, another one right there.
exactly. Yes. And so when you take a look at this, there's always these little conversations going on. So you can't tell me for a second that they're not some of these big picture stuff aren't coming out, especially like I said, when the losses continue to pile up. You're like, oh my goodness, these guys are probably sitting in the dugout. Oh my goodness, where do we go from here? Where does this team go? Who comes in from AAA? Who of these players at the end of the year are going to stick around next season? Who do you think? This Gausman and Bassitt are probably sitting there chatting it up about like Bowden Francis and Yariel Rodriguez and how to help them and what tips can they give. It's all those little things, right? And these little conversations end up turning into bigger ones around the team and around the clubhouse. So yeah, 100% no. I like that take a lot.
And just where this is kind of coming from with Kevin Gausman and Chris Bassitt, like just looking at the Toronto Blue Jays, you have all these World Series aspirations. We thought at bare minimum this was a wild card team. Look kind of what happened. Toronto Blue Jays finished 74-87, 13 games under 500, bottom 5 in the American League in runs for and runs against. I looked at some of their team stats. There was only one team categorical category on the score that the Toronto Blue Jays were above league average in, and that was on base percentage at 313. They were 13th in the league. Every single thing else, they were either 16th or lower, a lot of these being low 20s. It's just not going to play. You can't be a bottom third team in almost every single MLB categorical category that matters and try to be productive on a baseball field. Just simply impossible. So these comments, again, they've probably been stirring up all season. They were probably stirring up last season when the Toronto Blue Jays offense was not very good as well. So being on a pitcher on the Toronto Blue Jays definitely has some mental wear and tear. Not the easiest thing you're ever going to do in your life. So we got to give a little bit of credit to some of these guys, especially as we'll get into some of these other articles based off, especially at the start of this year with how anemic this offense was. But saying that, we do have some other stuff to get into. Again, Kevin Gausman, John Schneider, Ross Atkins, kind of where this Toronto Blue Jays organization was halfway through the season, where a lot of the fans' brains were at. Again, I don't know if we're necessarily going to get into the MLB scores around the league. We'll probably just kind of go over them. Just maybe one thing that we saw from one of the best days of baseball, first day of playoffs. You love to see that. Wish our Toronto Blue Jays were there. Fortunately, a lot more things to talk about, but we're going to take one more short break. Today's episode is also sponsored by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. With hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com, you might find your perfect stay, even if it's in your rival city. It's looking like the boys are going to go to Vegas later on. Obviously, we're going to be looking at some Jets games throughout this season. Maybe head out for a Canucks game. We're probably just going to be looking at the Canucks in Winnipeg. I would love to go to Vancouver, but again, we have all these things kind of in the realm that we like to talk about. We use Booking.com. Braden loves to stay in his penthouses when he goes on these big vacations, so he's always searching on the web. From hotels that look over stadiums to friendly resorts, Booking.com has so many choices across so many cities for your summer travel this MLB season. Obviously, it's not the MLB anymore. So winter, you got the NHL, you got the NFL, stuff like that. So many more things to do, even with the MLB season being over. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even if it's your rivals, at Booking.com. Booking.yeah. All right, so like I've been teasing for pretty much this whole episode, Kevin Gausman, this is not the first time that he has spoken out about the Toronto Blue Jays shortcomings. There has been two other times this season where Kevin Gausman has kind of gone into just the current state of the Toronto Blue Jays. One of them, he literally said, if we don't pitch well, we'll probably lose. Was at the point the Toronto Blue Jays were at some point of the season. This was June 15th when this article came out. And this is when the Toronto Blue Jays offense, this is when you had George Springer in the leadoff spot still. This is when you had Bichette still in the lineup. This is when things were going extremely bad. Kevin Gausman, one of the first people to speak out about the team, the current construction, the team's lineups, things like that, when pretty much all of Toronto Blue Jays land, which never happens, was together saying, why in the hell is George Springer still at this leadoff spot? So Kevin Gausman goes into this by saying, as much as you want to try to block it out, it's really hard to. The reality is, if we don't pitch well, we're probably going to lose. So we were talking about kind of the mental toll that you do take on as a starting pitcher in the MLB. Toronto Blue Jays just, they hiked that up to a whole new levels.
Yeah, man, it's tough to I think get in the headspace of especially a starting pitcher. I mean, it is different when you're an everyday player and you're on the field and you have control over some of the game every single day. As a starting pitcher, I mean, you're taken out of it for 4 to 5 games, every time. So it is probably rough sitting there watching your team and guys that you sit with and train with and whatever go out and throw awesome games and still end up losing the baseball games. It's got to take a toll mentally. And honestly, that starts to take a toll physically. You probably don't go out there and you don't bring your best stuff every day. And it's not even anything that you can control. It's just when you know that you go out there and give it your absolute all and you're still going to get smacked in the face with a loss, that's very difficult. And Carter, I mean, I always go bring it back to, when we played, right? And you go out there and you go and you pitch 7 innings, maybe you give up 2 runs and you think, wow, this game must be in the bag. And then, you bring in a reliever who gives up 9 the next inning. I mean, that is just the worst feeling in the world. So take that to the major league level. And oh my goodness, dude, I would be frustrated.
I'd definitely be frustrated, but I think it'd be a lot easier to endure when you're getting paid millions of dollars like Kevin Gausman is. But yeah, that example is actually funny because for me, I went through that exact same situation. Again, credit to me, I guess. So just a little bit of a tire pump on Locked On Blue Jays here. But I was actually APing for a midget team. Again, it was just like the house league. It wasn't anything too crazy. Again, I'll kind of reel myself back in here a little bit. Don't let the ego go too crazy. But 7 inning games, I pitched 6 innings of scoreless baseball. We get one guy to come in. We're up 8-0. Again, I was APing, so I didn't overly care. Again, it was just nice to kind of, show up. They tied the game. Then game ended tied. So for me, I was like, hey, I did all I could. So if it was my baseball team, though, I can imagine how mad I actually would have been because I couldn't do anything in that moment. My arm was about to fall off. If I would have went back out there, I just would have been a human pitching machine. But maybe, who knows? Maybe I would have did a little bit better than the people that they were throwing out there. Someone that was actually on this podcast was one of the pitchers in that game. So a little bit of a ricochet shot there. But going into just some other stuff, we have one more Kevin Gausman article, and it was just about, again, the Toronto Blue Jays' current state. And he made a prediction pretty much. He said, we continue to play this way, this team, this roster will not be together for much longer. It might take a month, might take a year. We're not going to be together. Look where we are. This roster's not really together. It's starting to crumble more than I think we've ever fathomed at the start of the 2024 season. So I guess Kevin Gausman, obviously being in the Toronto Blue Jays clubhouse, saw this pretty early on. So when we look at some of the other guys throughout the Toronto Blue Jays media, you got some of these analysts, you got your like Arden Zwellings, your Schneider VDs to being a little bit optimistic, which is fair. And you have John Schneider, Ross Atkins saying, oh, we had one little win streak. We got to wait. Just wait a little bit longer. George Springer's going to figure it out. We're going to get better. That was just straight lying to the Toronto Blue Jays fans' faces. That's what they were doing. They had to have known that this team was not going to do anything because everyone in Toronto Blue Jays land knew that this team was not going to be able to compete for a playoff spot, or even if they did make the playoffs, not be able to compete in a deep playoff run.
Yeah, man. I mean, we talked about this all season long of that. The just the sort of the BS that was, given to the fans was a smack in the face. And honestly, it again, you expect it, right? You know they're not going to come out and say there's problems all over, but you maybe don't expect them to stay on the same sort of feed for so long. At some point, you got to be like, okay, we're all seeing this. We talked to Blue Jays fans outside of Rogers. What was it like? What was that? June, May? Like it was so early, and people were already seeing this. We were talking about this all season long. And so for them to wait so long to actually come out and say something is crazy to me. And I know it's crazy to all the fans, and that's what's sort of pissing everybody off. So I think that's one thing moving forward is be a little bit more open. And I'm not saying you have to go out there and say there's problems everywhere, but have a little bit of compassion for the fans that are going to be with this team at, ride or die till the end of time. Give them the benefit of the doubt here when they're seeing it. I mean, just understand a little bit, I think, and you don't got to be feeding us the BS. And I think that was part of, we saw Kevin Gausman and Chris Bassitt both come out, a couple other guys talk about the problems early on. And it's frustrating to see the players do that before the management does, I think, because then it seems like your players are turning on the squad when that's not the case. They're just being realistic.
Being a manager in the MLB, it's a tough thing to manage because it's with the comments. Like, you obviously, you're John Schneider. You're not going to say this team sucks because that's the fans. They might like that in the moment, maybe, but then what do you have to look forward to? The players are obviously going to hate that. You're going to lose your clubhouse with that. You can't completely crap all over the players. But at some point, you can't just go out and completely lie to the entire Blue Jays fan base. But I guess at the end of the day, if you're going to have the players manager or the fans, as a manager, you're definitely going to take the fans. So there's really no winning as a manager. I'm not saying John Schneider should have went out and said this team is terrible. They're not going to do anything. You could have said something along the lines of, we're just not playing the right caliber of baseball right now. We're not playing up to our par. We need things to get better. Something along the lines, this loose, like media trained jargon that should be just, a prerequisite for a Blue Jays manager of baseball, you would think. But maybe the Toronto Blue Jays need to turn to some media training for some of these managers on the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah, dude. I mean, they could bring us in. Us.
I mean, if you want honesty, we're not going to sugarcoat nothing. So maybe we got to get on the scene out there and touchdown in Toronto, maybe Dunedin for spring training. We'll see what happens.
We might have to. Carter, you know what? There's been a lot sort of that have been going on within just the league. I mean, we talk so much about Blue Jays, but it's the MLB playoffs right now, and there is a lot going on. We have so much more to get into yet on the Blue Jays stuff in the next few days. It is absolutely bonkers with information coming out, but we will get to all that. Of course, there is the press conference actually today, so look out for that on tomorrow's episode, and we're going to be going over all of that and everything that comes out of that, because there's going to be some quotes from John Schneider, Ross Atkins, whoever else that we'll definitely get into. But Carter, just going over sort of some of the stuff that happened in the MLB today. Two standouts for me, honestly. Detroit beating Houston, huge, unreal. I'm fired up. Let's go Detroit.
That's a screwball showdown. Like that's what you had with when you look at the Detroit Tigers. You make the playoffs. Like you almost, I'm not going to say guaranteed win, but screwball this year has been absolutely disgusting. And that's why I really like the Tigers in a wild card series, because you only need to win 2 games. So they got to win 1 out of 2. One thing that I saw from just, like the slate of games, for one, I don't want to get too far into this because we're already at 33 minutes, but why do we have games during the day? Nobody's watching these. Like, how are you supposed to get on a game? I know when we had some games like Dome at Home for the Toronto Blue Jays, what they called it. You have a game on at 12 o'clock. Like for me, I'm at school, you're working, things like that. Obviously, everyone else is doing the same thing. Like nobody is going to be able to watch these playoff games during the day, unless maybe they're lucky like you and you can throw something on maybe in the corner, or you have to go through your own ways. And obviously, maybe you get in a little bit of trouble if you get caught. So just a management, a scheduling catastrophe from the MLB. The other thing I want to get into is standings don't matter in the playoffs. Who cares about standings? You look at, again, the Braves are going to ruin this probably in their Padres game, but the Detroit Tigers, the road team, they beat the Astros. The Kansas City Royals, they beat the Baltimore Orioles. That looked like a juggernaut going into this offseason. Then you got the New York Mets. Francisco Lindor can just continue to carry this team past your Brewers. Again, you're not a huge fan, but obviously you did have them going far. Not necessarily far, just maybe you wanted them to. But that's just an interesting trend. It's just, you just got to get to the dance. That's what we were saying for the Toronto Blue Jays. Obviously, it's nice to win the division, but you got to be hot going into the playoffs.
That's the biggest component. We always talk about this, and I know we're big CFL guys too, right? We said with the Bombers, with the way they struggled early in the season, we said just make it to the playoffs. Anything can happen, right? That's the same thing with the MLB. Same thing with the NHL playoffs. You see some of these teams just make runs. That's all you have to do. Like you said, get to the dance, and you never know what happens.
You got the D-backs a couple of years ago. You have the Braves winning it. You have last year, you had the Texas Rangers, a wild card team, winning the whole thing. So again, playoffs, you just got to get there. But Braden, you got anything else to get into before we do kind of head out for the day?
Well, I feel horrible. I need to lie down or something. Maybe have a shower, bath. I don't know, one of the two. And then hopefully I'm going to try to recuperate for tomorrow's episode, because I don't want to put all the pressure on Carter doing about 900 ads throughout the week either. So tonight and tomorrow is going to be recovery for me. And hopefully I can come back and, get back to my usual talkative self.
Some are saying it's the biggest day of the offseason. We got to see what Ross Atkins and John Schneider have to say about this egregious 2024 Toronto Blue Jays team. If you're going to be honest about any team ever in the history of the MLB, I want to see Ross Atkins throw some people under the bus here. I want to see him throw himself under the bus. I want to see some accountability from somebody within this organization, because we have not gotten a lot of that other than really from the players. You haven't really gotten a whole lot from the Toronto Blue Jays organization and their management staff. Just want to say thank you guys for watching, likes, comments. Everything recently has been very awesome, especially with the way the Toronto Blue Jays season was trending. 2 for 10 for 2-10 in your last 12, and we're still getting the people coming back. So that's awesome to see. Just watch the playoffs. Just don't think about the Toronto Blue Jays. watch that John Schneider Ross Atkins interview because I think it's going to be interesting. I hope that there are some answers just going at them. I want this to be again. I'm praying on John Schneider's downfall. We might be able to say that because I wanted him to get fired up, get kicked out. Now I kind of want him to go under a little bit of turmoil for this interview because we went through a lot of turmoil in 162 games of a season. So John Schneider can suffer a little bit as well.
Yeah, Carter. The only thing that I have left to say is yes, I'm going to be absolutely tuned into that. That is going to be probably the biggest piece of information that we're going to get going into sort of this big off season.
I think for a while. So
yeah.
We'll
so,
see.
We're going to have to be dialed right in. Hopefully you guys will tune in after that, obviously to the, I guess it would be the Thursday show where we'll break it all down for you guys as well. Quick shout out. We didn't mention this yesterday. It sort of came out just a little bit after,
right.
Pete Rose, just, he sadly passed away. What a legendary career. And just sort of brutal, right? A guy who just never really, made a mistake, never got the redemption. And I think that there's going to be some talk in the whole PEDs gambling sort of stuff. So maybe, one day if we have a sort of a spare day, maybe we need to go into that just on a sort of a league-wide little rant here that I have about Pete Rose, Barry Bonds, sort of the whole gang there. But in saying that, Carter, that's pretty much all I got for today, my guy.
Yeah, we'll definitely have some time in the off season. We'll get to the dog days where we can definitely snap one of those episodes around. But unfortunately, I think we could promise that for probably another month. Because we said we don't think there's a lot of Toronto Blue Jays news going out, but we've been 0 for 2 now. Already firings. Didn't think they'd happen this quickly, but here we are. But we'll let Braden get a little bit of sleep. Credit to you. I know you've really been battling today, so I'd have to do the ads. Not really a big deal. I can actually talk and move. If I wanted to go for a walk, I could probably handle that. I don't think you'd be able to do that. So credit to you for making it up to the podcast. But thank you guys for watching. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.